So this video lecture is going to try and cover the two most recent poems that we're reading for this week, 6B on epistemological crises. So this would be Philip Larkin's Aubade and Seamus Heaney's Anything Can Happen. These are not sort of perfectly postmodern poems, but these are postmodern inflected poems, and so we're gonna talk some about what that involves. The Philip Larkin poem. So Larkin becomes really famous for what he considered to be the sort of English tradition of people like Thomas Hardy and Wordsworth and people like this, who presented these sort of commonplace settings and drew philosophical meaning out of them. And so that's what Larkin tried to do. And so we get that in this poem because this is very much about a sort of regular working class person who goes home and has this revelatory sort of encounter, not with death necessarily, but with the idea of death. But the thing that's interesting about this, in terms of our sort of study of epistemological uncertainties, is that Larkin explores the impossibility of sort of understanding death as a transcendent truth, and therefore as the impossibility of understanding the meaning of life as a transcendent truth. I mean, he says here, this is line 4, well, okay, so I'll actually just start from the beginning and give you this opening bit, starting from line 1. I work all day and get half drunk at night, waking at 4 to soundless dark I stare. In time the curtain edges will grow light. Till then I see what's really always there, unresting death the whole day nearer now, making all thought impossible, but how and where and when I shall myself die. So, I mean, this has taken us up through line 7, and we get here a couple of really interesting components of epistemology. So line 4, till then I see what's really always there. This is an interesting line because it suggests to us that this poet persona has gained some sort of access to an ontological truth. Of course, it's compromised because it is half drunk and in a sort of semi-sleeping state. But there's this notion that there's an ontological reality to which you can gain access, but it's not always readily apparent. But then we've also got lines 6 and 7, making all thought impossible, but how and where and when I shall myself die. So we've got compromised cognitive processes here. So every thought becomes impossible. Thought becomes limited or compromised. And then the second stanza begins, line 11, the mind blanks at the glare. So a lot of this that we're encountering here is about not being able to know, or not being able to think properly or comprehend properly. And this is a sort of theme throughout the poem, is this inability to come to terms with the thing that's really always there, again, according to line 4. So, I mean, this stanza 3 gives us, again, this sort of critique of traditional epistemologies. Line 22, no trick dispels, religion used to try, that vast moth-eaten musical brocade created to pretend we never die. So that's 22 through 24. This idea that that religion had provided some sort of explanation of death and life and purpose and meaning in the world. And then 25 to 26, in specious stuff that says no rational being can fear a thing it will not feel. I mean, this is a Sophoclean precept. Sophocles argues that because we don't know what death is, it's illogical to fear it. And so Sophocles, father of Western philosophy, what we get in these lines is a very sort of subtle rejection of Western philosophical understandings of the world. Beginning of stanza 4, and so it stays just on the edge of vision, a small unfocused blur, a standing chill that slows each impulse down to indecision. This would be lines 31 through 33. So again, we've got this sense of death, truth, life, whatever it is, as a kind of constant blur at the edge of one's vision. A constant sort of existence, a constant companion that one can never really focus on or identify. And so we've got this epistemological crisis, because the critical tools, the intellectual tools that we have at our disposal are insufficient for engaging with this truth. So that's what we get in Larkin. And we get something similar in Seamus Heaney's Anything Can Happen. So Heaney is an Irish poet, and he becomes famous for drawing influences from classical literature, especially Irish Gaelic literature, Celtic literature, and Old English literature. He's an award-winning translator of Beowulf, which is an Old English epic poem. And in this case, in the case of Anything Can Happen on 2967, this is a sort of modern adaptation or modern reworking of an ode by the Roman poet Horace. Now, adaptation is a popular postmodern technique, and it's actually something that I work extensively on. But the idea is that you take something, you take an ancient text or a culturally significant text, and you rework it to provide new meaning, and it bears within it the echoes of the original, as well as connecting to the new work that you're having it do. And so Heaney writes Anything Can Happen after September 11th, after the terrorist attacks on the World Trade Center, and it's about, the poem itself deals with this sort of impossibility of foreseeing one's fate, the impossibility of knowing what's going to happen in the future. And we get that in the title and the opening line, Anything Can Happen, which is, again, this sort of space of opening for grand possibilities. But then lines 1 through 3 give us this sort of questioning of traditional religion, in this case, sort of Greek or Roman mythology. Heaney writes, "You know how Jupiter will mostly wait for clouds to gather head before he hurls the lightning." So, this is a sort of satiric joke, because it suggests that, so for those of you who don't know, Jupiter, or his Greek equivalent Zeus, is king of the gods. His primary weapon is the thunderbolt, which would be lightning. The idea that Zeus, or that Jupiter, has to wait for a thunderstorm to use lightning suggests that this god actually may have no power, that it may just be natural phenomenon. And so we have this we have this undermining of a religious mythology or a sort of religious authority. But then he turns it. So the end of line 3 to line 4. Well, just now he galloped his thundering cart and his horses across a clear blue sky. It shook the earth and the clogged under earth, the river Styx, the winding streams, the Atlantic shore itself. Anything can happen. So we've got, and that actually went beyond line 4, so that went from 3 to 8. But we've got this sort of return to mythology, but in a way that breaks down what would normally be expected. So, he galloped his thunder cart and his horses across a clear blue sky. This is the unpredictability, the randomness of the world. And then here, this one doesn't have line numbers marked, so I have to count them physically. So line 10, we've got this reference to stropped beak fortune. And fortune or fate is a sort of important classical reference in terms of one's position within the world. So we've got this idea of the Wheel of Fortune, which is not just a game show, it is in fact a classical reference. And this idea that essentially those that are on top, those that are successful, will by the action of fate be sent tumbling downward. And those that are downtrodden and depressed will be raised up. So the idea of the Wheel of Fortune is this sort of almost like karma, that like if you are successful, you will be brought low, and if you are low, you will be raised up to success. So this is the idea here, and by this reference to strop-beaked fortune, Heaney gives us a sort of vicious version of this. And so the September 11th attacks become a sort of blind fortune, sort of Wheel of Fortune decline of the powerful kind of thing here. But it's also, it's purposeless. Like this is just, the Wheel of Fortune works this way. It has no sort of ethical imperative. It has no sort of purpose or goal or anything like this, because the universe simply functions. And this is sort of the postmodern position, is that these traditional sort of ways of looking at the world no longer give us proper insight into the universe, because the universe just sort of happens, and we can find meaning in it by imposing narratives of religion or mythology or whatever it is, but they're not inherently true. They are unreliable epistemological tools that we use to try and understand our place in the universe.